Title: The Student Who Answered. Roll call after she died. If you're ever late for roll call, don't ever hope your name gets called. And if it does, don't answer. Don't like, don't subscribe unless you want to be the next one to hear a voice you shouldn't. Trust me. The morning sun broke weakly over Philippines National High School on a muggy Monday in August 2010. The students shuffled into classrooms, tired, murmuring, their eyes still heavy with the remnants of sleep. But inside room 103, there was something that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Something not right. The bell rang, and the school principal, Mrs. Ortega, began the day's roll call. As she read the names, her voice echoed through the dusty room. Some of the students were already half asleep, glancing at their phones or doodling on notebooks. "Maria Santos," she called. A faint but clear voice replied, "Present." For a moment, Mrs. Ortega paused. Maria Santos was a popular girl, a senior with a reputation for always being on time. But what Mrs. Ortega didn't know, what nobody in the room knew, was that Maria had died just hours before. In a car accident on the way home from a school event the night before. Her parents had identified her body early that morning. It was all over the local news. And yet her voice, unmistakable, clear and strong, had just answered roll call. The room went silent. Mrs. Ortega blinked in confusion. She looked down at her roster. Maria Santos wasn't supposed to be there. She was dead. "Is anyone playing a joke?" Mrs. Ortega asked, her voice tight. She glanced up, expecting to see someone smiling, but every student stared back at her with wide eyes. No one had spoken. For a second, it felt like time stood still. The air thickened, and an oppressive weight seemed to settle over the room. But then another student broke the silence. "Ma'am, I swear, I hear it too." A classmate, Anna, spoke up. Her voice trembled. Maria's voice. The other students nodded, all agreeing, but none daring to speak the words they feared. "Present," the voice had said. But it wasn't just a voice. It felt like her. Maria had been there, standing in the back of the classroom. And yet, no one had seen her. The day went on in a haze. But in the back of room 103, a cold dread simmered under the surface. Students tried to carry on, but the air was thick, as if someone was watching them. They couldn't escape the feeling that something wasn't right, that they weren't alone. At lunch, a group of Maria's closest friends gathered, talking in hushed whispers. Anna, the one who'd heard the voice too, shuddered every time she replayed the incident in her head. She couldn't shake the feeling that the voice had come from somewhere from the very back of the room, near the old chalkboard. "Maria can't be dead," Anna muttered. She spoke. "I heard her." Her friend Liza shook her head, trying to calm Anna down. "It's just a coincidence. Maybe you're all imagining it. It was probably a prank." But deep down, they knew it wasn't a prank. The rumors began to spread quickly after that. Students from the other classrooms started hearing the whispers, the stories, the voice. It wasn't long before someone leaked the truth to the media. Maria Santos had died, but she had answered roll call as though she were still alive. As the school day wore on, the dread in room 103 grew. Teachers shrugged it off, but students couldn't stop talking about it. Some joked it was a ghost, while others whispered about something far darker, something they couldn't yet explain. That afternoon, during gym class, a crash came from room 103. A chair had fallen. The teacher rushed in only to find no one near it. The same chair that had once belonged to Maria. It was just empty now. But the air was thick with the same tension, as if something had been disturbed. Later that night, Maria's friends gathered at her house to mourn her passing. But as they sat there, staring at the photo albums, a knock came at the door. No one had expected anyone. It was too late for visitors. When the door opened, there was no one there. But as they closed it, they found something strange lying on the doorstep Maria's school ID. It had been thrown onto the ground, face up, as if someone had deliberately placed it there. And written on the back of the ID was a single sentence: "I'm not gone. I'm still here." As the story spread, so did the fear. And the strangest thing of all? The next day, Maria's name was called once more. But this time the voice was different. Faint, muffled, present. But no one could explain why she was still answering. No one could explain what they had heard that day, or what was coming next. What would they find next? The next morning, students in room 103 arrived early. They walked in with whispers, their eyes nervously glancing around the room, avoiding the empty desk where Maria used to sit. The walls felt different today, as if they had absorbed the fear of the past 24 hours. Every floorboard creaked louder. Every shadow felt like something was just out of reach, waiting. When the bell rang, Mrs. Ortega, the class teacher, hesitated before calling roll. It was early, too early to have processed the events of the day before, but the principal had warned her to carry on as usual. It's a tragic incident, yes, but we must move forward. She called the names of the students one by one. Anna Reyes? Here, Anna replied, voice steady but eyes darting toward the empty chair. Daniel Cruz? Present, Daniel said, voice barely above a whisper. He was still shaken, but there was no way around it. They had to carry on. They had no choice. Maria Santos? Mrs. Ortega called. The class froze. The words seemed to hang in the air. There was an unsettling silence, thick as the air before a storm. Then, just as before, a voice came soft, clear, but unmistakable. Present, everyone in the room turned to look at each other. Daniel's blood ran cold, and Anna's breath caught in her throat. There was no mistaking the voice. It was Maria's voice, her voice, speaking from the back of the room. Mrs. Ortega, who had been gripping the attendance sheet tightly, looked up, her eyes wide. "Who said that?" she demanded, her voice trembling. There was no answer. The room was dead silent, and for a moment the air grew impossibly still. Even the fans above them seemed to stop spinning. Anna stood up, suddenly panicked. Maria is dead," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Mrs. Ortega shook her head. "You all heard wrong. It's just a rumor, a misunderstanding." But they all heard it. They all knew it was real. No one had dared to speak until Daniel, unable to take it any longer, rose from his seat. "I'm going to the principal," he said, voice trembling, eyes wide. "This isn't right. We need to get out of here." But the moment he stood up, something strange happened. The overhead lights flickered. A cold gust of air swept through the room, making the windows rattle. The door to the classroom creaked open just enough for the light from the hallway to cast a shadow. A shadow of someone standing there. But there was no one there. The class let out a collective gasp, and Mrs. Ortega, her face pale, ran to shut the door. But as she did, she noticed something, a message scribbled in the dust on the windowsill. "She's still here." Later that day, the entire class seemed to be on edge. The school counselor made an emergency visit, asking everyone to talk about the previous day's events. But as much as the students tried to pretend nothing had happened, they all knew something unnatural was in the air. The voice, the shadows, the message. It all pointed to one horrifying truth. Maria's death wasn't the end. That night, Anna went home, but sleep didn't come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Maria's face pale, eyes wide open, staring at her from the darkness. And every time she woke, the scratching sound from the walls grew louder. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was the sound of something trying to get out. At exactly 3 a.m., Anna's phone buzzed. She checked the message, half awake. It was from an unknown number. The text simply read, "I'm still here. Where are you?" She jumped out of bed, her heart racing. She checked the text again, and this time she noticed something strange. The message came from Maria's old phone number. The next morning, Daniel met up with Anna before school, his face pale. "I couldn't sleep," he confessed. "I keep here," changing her voice, saying the same thing. He paused, glancing around Ulman nervously, his voice dropping lower. She said, "Don't leave me." But Anna could barely speak. She knew the voice. She had heard it too. It wasn't just in their dreams. It was in their waking world, and it was getting stronger. That afternoon, the principal's office was flooded with calls from concerned parents. Some of them had heard about the whispers, the ghostly voice in the classroom, and some had even reported hearing the voice in their own homes. A handful of students had also started seeing Maria in their dreams, and the dreams were growing darker, more vivid. But it wasn't just dreams. One student claimed to have seen Maria standing outside her window that very afternoon smiling, her hands pressed against the glass. The truth was undeniable. There was something in the building. Something left behind, something that wouldn't let go. And as the days went on, the students began to feel it. The coldness that wrapped around their necks, the shadows that followed them down the hallways, the feeling of someone just behind them. Maria wasn't just dead. She had come back, but not in the way they imagined. And soon, one by one, the students would learn the truth. The school was buzzing with unease. What had started as whispers had turned into something more sinister. Each student could feel it, the air growing colder, thicker, more oppressive. The classroom lights flickered more often. The scratching sounds in the walls grew louder, and strange things began happening in the hallways. Maria's presence was everywhere. It wasn't just that voice during roll call anymore. It was in the corners of their eyes, in the shadows where figures seemed to move without cause. In the days that followed, Maria's ghost, or whatever it was, began to take more tangible form. Her face appeared in mirrors, in windows, and even in the water glasses they drank from. It wasn't just one or two students seeing her, it was all of them. The otherworldly figure of Maria, her eyes wide with an unspoken message, haunted them. But the most disturbing part wasn't her face. It was what she wanted from them. It started with Anna. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was stalking her. Her breath would catch in her throat at the sound of footsteps behind her. But every time she turned around, the hallways were empty. Then, the dreams began. At first, they were simple, just fleeting glimpses of Maria standing at the edge of the classroom, smiling faintly. But the dreams grew darker. In her nightmares, Maria would stand in the corner, her hair floating as though suspended in water, her eyes wide, mouth agape, as if begging for help. But the most chilling part? Every time Anna woke up, she could hear her voice. "Help me. Please, Anna. Don't leave me alone." Anna was losing sleep, her health deteriorating, but no one could explain it. Her parents, worried about her, took her to a doctor, but the doctor found nothing physically wrong. One night after school, Daniel and Anna decided to return to the school building, despite the warnings. They couldn't shake the feeling that Maria was still there, waiting, lingering in the shadows. They told themselves it was just fear, just nerves, but deep down, they knew something was horribly wrong. When they reached room 103, they found it unlocked. The door creaked open slowly, as if inviting them in. The classroom was empty. The air felt colder than before. But on the blackboard, written in thick, smeared chalk, were words that froze Anna in place. "I never left. You can't leave either." Anna stepped back. Her heart raced. This wasn't just a prank. This was something beyond them, something they couldn't escape. Suddenly, a faint rustling came from the back of the room. Anna turned, eyes wide with terror. Her body went cold when she saw a figure standing at the back of the classroom. Maria. But this time her face wasn't smiling. It was twisted, contorted in pain. Her hands were pressed against the glass of the classroom window, and her eyes, once kind, were filled with terror. Before they could react, the lights flickered, and then, just as quickly, everything went black. Anna and Daniel ran from the room, but the door slammed shut behind them with a violent bang. When they turned to look, Maria's figure was standing just behind them, her hands gripping the doorframe, her face inches from theirs. "I'm not gone," Maria's voice whispered in their ears. But this time the voice was no longer soft. It was desperate. It was angry. "I'm still here." Anna screamed and stumbled backward, but as she did, her foot caught on something. She looked down and gasped. It was a small black book, a journal, filled with scribbled notes. She picked it up and opened it, her hands trembling. The pages were filled with frantic handwriting, but at the very end, there was one final note. "To escape, you must forget. Forget me, forget my name." Anna closed the journal, her mind racing.
Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the hallway. The lights flickered again, and the air grew heavier. The temperature dropped. A chill ran down their spines as they heard the faint sound of water dripping slow, steady, from somewhere deep within the walls. "She's here," Daniel whispered, his voice trembling. But it wasn't just Maria anymore. The presence had spread. It was as if the entire building had become a part of her, the walls, the floor, the very air. And as the 30-day curse continued to take hold, they realized there was no escaping it. Maria was trapped, and now so were they. The door to room 103 creaked open on its own, and both Anna and Daniel stepped toward it, no longer able to resist the pull of the entity that now held them captive. The next morning, the school went into lockdown. The principal was found in his office, drenched in sweat, mumbling something about water and drowning, but his words were incoherent. The students of room 103 were never found again. The building was abandoned, but some say that if you pass by Suksan Place, you can still hear the sound of a roll call being called in room 103. And if you listen closely enough, you might hear a voice reply, "Present." If you thought this was terrifying, the next story will haunt you even more. Hit subscribe button so you don't miss it.